Well, hello, listeners. Hello, listeners, wherever you may be in time and space. I'm going to see if we can get in a book here on good old Periscope audio stream in these last days before it goes away. This book was first published in 1919 by Robert McBride and Company, and it was a big hit and also very controversial at the time. Let's dive in, and if we have time, when we get to the end of this, we'll do some more talk about the author and the book and the controversy about it. This book is, let's just dive in. Jurgen, A Comedy of Justice by James Branch Cabell. To Burton Roscoe, before each taradiddle, uncowed by sciolists, robuster persons twiddle tremendously big fists. Our gods are good, they tell us, nor will our gods defer remission of rude fellows, ability to err. So this, your Jurgen, travels, content to compromise, ordinance none unravels, explicitly and sighs. And some quotes. Others, with better moderation, do either entertain the vulgar history of Jurgen as a fabulous addition unto the true and authentic story of Saint Eugenius of Pontsme, or else we conceive the literal acception to be a misconstruction of the symbolical expression, apprehending a veritable history in an emblem or piece of Christian poesy. And this emblematical construction hath been received by men not forward to extenuate the acts of saints. Philip Borsdale. A forced construction is very idle. If readers of the high history of Jurgen do not meddle with the allegory will not meddle with them. Without minding it at all, the whole is as plain as a pikestaff. It might as well be pretended that we cannot see Poussin's pictures without first being told the allegory, as that the allegory aids us in understanding Jurgen. E. Noel Codman. Too urbane to advocate delusion, too hale for the bitterness of irony, this fable of Jurgen is, as the world itself, a book wherein each man will find what his nature enables him to see, which gives us back each his own image, and which teaches us each the lesson that each of us desires to learn. John Frederick Lowenstein. Of Jurgen eke they make mention that of an old way gat his youth agoon, and gat himself a shirt as bright as fire, wherein to jape, yet gate not his desire, in any country no condition. A foreword. Nescio quid certe est, et hilex in limine lettre. A foreword which asserts nothing. In continental periodicals, not more than a dozen articles in all would seem to have given accounts or partial translations of the Jurgen legends. No thorough investigation of this epos can be said to have appeared in print anywhere prior to the publication in 1913 of the monumental Synopsis of Aryan Mythology by Angelo de Ruz. It is unnecessary to observe that in this exhaustive digest, Professor de Ruz has given 7, page 415, et sequentia, a summary of the greater part of these legends as contained in the collections of Verville and Bulg, and has discussed at length and with much learning the esoteric meaning of these folk stories and their bearing upon questions which the, quote, solar theory, unquote, of myth explanation has given rise. To his volumes and to the pages of Mr. Lewisdam's Key to the Popular Tales of Potsme must be referred all those who may elect to think of Jurgen as the resplendent, journeying, and procreative sun. Equally, in reading hereinafter will the judicious waive all allegorical interpretation, if merely because the suggestions hitherto advanced are inconveniently various. Thus Verville finds the Nessus shirt a symbol of retribution, where Bulg, with rather wide divergence, would have it represent the dangerous gift of genius. Then it may be remembered that Dr. Codman says, without any hesitancy, of Mother Serrata, this Mother Middle is the world generally, an obvious anagram of Erda S. And this Sarita rules not merely the middle of the working days, but the midst of everything. She is the factor of middleness, of mediocrity, of an avoidance of extremes, of the eternal compromise begotten by use and want. She is the Miss Grundy of the Leshy. She is Comstockery, and her shadow is common sense. Yet Codman speaks with certainly no more authority than Prout, when the latter in his Origins of Fable declares this epos is, quote, a parable of man's vain journeying in search of that rationality and justice which his nature craves, and discovers nowhere in the universe, and the shirt is an emblem of this instinctive craving, as the shadow symbolizes conscience. Serrata typifies a surrender to life as it is, a giving up of man's rebellious self-centeredness and selfishness, the anagram being sedari. Thus do interpretations throng and clash. That was the end of the quote. Thus do interpretations throng and clash, and neatly equal the commentators in number. Yet possibly each one of these unriddlings, with no doubt a host of others, is conceivable, so that wisdom will dwell upon none of them very seriously. With the origin and the occult meaning of the folklore of Ponxme, this book at least is in no wise concerned. Its unambitious aim has been merely to familiarize English readers with the Jurgen epos for the tale's sake, and this tale of old years is one which, by rare fortune, can be given to English readers almost unabridged, in view of the singular delicacy and pure-mindedness of the Jurgen mythos. In all, not more than a half-dozen deletions have seemed expedient and have been duly indicated, in order to remove such sparse and unimportant outcroppings of medieval frankness as might conceivably offend the squeamish. Since this volume is presented simply as a story to be read for pastime, neither morality nor symbolism is hereinafter educed, and no parallels and authorities are quoted. Even the gaps are left unabridged by guesswork, whereas the historic and mythological problems perhaps involved are relinquished to those really thoroughgoing scholars whom erudition qualifies to deal with such topics, and tedium does not deter. In such terms and thus far ran the foreword to the first issues of this book, whose later fortunes have made necessary the lengthening of the foreword with a postscript. The needed addition, this much at least, chiming with good luck, is brief. It is just that fragment which some scholars, since the first appearance of this volume, have asserted upon what perfect frankness must describe as not indisputable grounds to be a portion of the 32nd chapter of the complete form of La Haute Histoire de Jurgen. And in reply to what these scholars assert, discretion says nothing. For this fragment was, of course, unknown when the high history was first put into English, and there is in consequence appears here little to be won either by endorsing or denying its claims to authenticity. Rather does discretion prompt the appending, without any gloss or scholia, of this fragment, which deals with the judging of Jurgen. Now a court was held by the Philistines to decide whether or not King Jurgen should be relegated to limbo. And when the judges were prepared for judging, there came into the court a great tumblebug, rolling in front of him his loved and properly housed young ones. With the creature came pages in black and white, bearing a sword, a staff, and a lance. This insect looked at Jurgen, and its pincers rose erect in horror. The bug cried to the three judges, "Now, by St. Anthony, this Jurgen must forthwith be relegated to limbo, for he is offensive and lewd and lascivious and indecent." "And how can that be?" says Jurgen. "You are offensive," the bug replied, "because this page has a sword which I chose to say is not a sword. What I choose to say is not a sword. You are lewd because that page has a lance, which I prefer to think is not a lance. You are lascivious because yonder page has a staff, which I elect to declare is not a staff. And finally, you are indecent for reasons of which a description would be objectionable to me, and which therefore I must decline to reveal to anybody." "Well, that sounds logical," said Jurgen, "but still at the same time it would be no worse for an admixture of common sense. For you gentlemen can see for yourselves by considering these pages fairly and as a whole, and these pages bear a sword and a lance and a staff and nothing else whatever, and you will deduce, I hope, that all the lewdness is in the insectival mind of him who itches to be calling these things by other names." The judges said nothing as yet, but they that guarded Jurgen and all the other Philistines stood to his side and to that side, to this side and to that side, with their eyes shut tight. And all these said, We decline to look at the pages fairly and as a whole, because to look might seem to imply a doubt of what the tumblebug has decreed. Besides, as long as the tumblebug has reasons which he declines to reveal, his reasons stay unanswerable, and you are plainly a prurient rascal who are making trouble for yourself. To the contrary, says Jurgen, I am a poet, and I make literature. But in Philistia, to make literature and to make trouble for yourself are synonyms, the tumblebug explained. I know, for already we of Philistia have been pestered by 3 of these makers of literature. Yes, there was Edgar, who I'm starved and haunted until I was tired of it. Then I chased him up a back alley one night and knocked out those annoying brains of his. And there was Walt, whom I chivied and battered from place to place and made a paralytic of him, and him too I labeled offensive and lewd and lascivious and indecent. Then later there was Mark, whom I frightened into disguising himself in a clown suit, so that nobody might suspect him to be a maker of literature. Indeed, I frightened him so that he hid away the greater parts of what he had made until after he was dead, and I could not get at him. That was a disgusting trick to play on me, I consider. Still, these are the only 3 detected makers of literature that have ever infested Philistia. Thanks be to goodness and my vigilance, but for both of which we might have been no more free from makers of literature than are the other countries. Now but these 3, cried Jurgen, are the glory of Philistia, and of all that Philistia has produced, it is these 3 alone, whom living ye made least of, that today are honored wherever art is honored, and where nobody bothers one way or the other about Philistia. What is art to me and my way of living? Replied the tumblebug wearily. I have no concern with art and letters and the other lewd idols of foreign nations. I have in charge the moral welfare of my young, whom I roll here before me, and trust with St. Anthony's aid to raise in time to be God-fearing tumblebugs like me, delighting in what is proper to their nature. For the rest, I have never minded dead men being well spoken of. No, no, my lad. Once whatever I may do means nothing to you, and once you are really rotten, you will find the tumblebug friendly enough. Meanwhile, I am paid to protest that living persons are offensive and lewd and lascivious and indecent, and one must live. Then the Philistines, who stood to this side and to that side, said in indignant unison, And we, the reputable citizenry of Philistia, are not at all in sympathy with those who would take any protest against the tumblebug as a justification of what they are pleased to call art. The harm done by the tumblebug seems to us very slight, whereas the harm done by the self-styled artist may be very great. Jurgen now looked more attentively at this queer creature, and he saw that the tumblebug was malodorous, certainly, but at bottom honest and well-meaning, and this seemed to Jurgen the saddest thing he had found among the Philistines. For the tumblebug was sincere in his insane doings, and all Philistia honored him sincerely, so that there was nowhere any hope for this people. Therefore King Jurgen addressed himself, as his need was, to submit to the strange customs of the Philistines. Now do you judge me fairly, cried Jurgen to his judges. If there be any justice in this mad country, and if there be none, do you relegate me to limbo, or any other place, so long as in that place this tumblebug is not omnipotent and sincere and insane. And Jurgen waited. Dumbarton Grange, April 1926. So this was, apparently this is added to the, to the latter edition, the revised edition, 1946 edition. So that is the introduction, and we'll get to the actual story in my next broadcast. And as Periscope's going away soon, I will be transferring all these over to YouTube. So please go to search out Roarshock channel on YouTube and subscribe and find Jurgen and lots of other stuff there too. I do appreciate your listening.